Hey friends, and welcome back to the Guitar Max channel, and I bet many of you have seen my video called "Is This Guitar Banned in the USA?" For Les Paul fans, you'll love the shape, but we've got some amazing specs on here. First of all, a couple of obvious things. It's got a Floyd Rose style tremolo on it. This particular one is a Fernandes licensed Floyd Rose, and of course you have the locking nut. It was a huge video for me with over 1.4 million views. Well, now, a few years later, thanks to a lawyer, I have found out that that guitar is actually not banned in the USA, and in that video I was completely wrong. Okay guys, so just to give you a quick recap of what that video was about, that was basically a demo and review video of a guitar called a Burny. Now this is related to the brand Fernandes. They make Fernandes and then the Burny guitars, and it was really a guitar that was very, very similar to a Les Paul, only the one that I had some really cool sustainer electronics in it. And my main focus in that video was, number one, that the guitar was really cool, and number two, that the guitar could not legally be sold in the USA because of that shape of the headstock, right? Because they were exactly copying that classic open book Gibson headstock shape. And this was a Japanese company, and so they could sell it in Japan, but not over here in the USA. Now, when I originally made that video, I was thinking about it in the context of the old Ibanez lawsuit era guitars, where they had used that exact same headstock shape and then eventually got sued by Gibson, and Gibson won the lawsuit and Ibanez had to change the design of their guitars. And I was thinking, well, if it was illegal for Ibanez, also a Japanese company, to do it, then certainly it would be illegal for Fernandes. Well, legally speaking, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. So since I am not a legal expert and I got this wrong before, for this video, I'm going to be talking with a real lawyer who's going to actually explain how all of this works. So please welcome Matt from the YouTube channel Blues Lawyer Confessional. Matt and Jack over there talk a lot about legal issues like the ongoing Dean versus Gibson lawsuit and various trademark problems, all kinds of things, and I'll put links to their channel down in the video description below. So Matt, first off, welcome to the channel, and secondly, was my Burny guitar actually illegal in the USA or otherwise? What's the deal here?
Thanks, Max. In answer to your question as to whether or not your Burny guitar is illegal, I'm happy to tell you, no, it's not. So what do we mean by illegal? Is it a crime to own that guitar? No, it's not. We'll get into that later. But I think what you're getting at is whether or not your guitar is a lawsuit guitar. To understand that term, you got to understand the history both of Gibson and of the 70s. In the 1970s, there were a lot of manufacturers coming out of Japan, all of which were putting out their own versions of the Les Paul. The number one of these was Ibanez. There were a lot of manufacturers all using that shape, but only Ibanez was using the headstock shape, the open book. Now for years, Gibson had been sending cease and desist letters to Ibanez saying, stop it. The open book headstock belongs to us. That is our trademark. For a long time, Ibanez ignored it. Finally, in the late 70s, Gibson sued Ibanez. Litigation went on for some time, but ultimately Ibanez saw the writing on the wall and they changed their headstock. They no longer sold a Les Paul copy with the open book headstock. They weren't the only ones to have their own Les Pauls. There was also a company, Fernandes, parent brand of Burny. They sold Fender copies under the Fernandes brand, and they sold Gibson copies under the Burny brand. Again, for years, Fernandes was selling their Burny guitars. They never got sued, at least not during what's called the lawsuit era, meaning the 1970s. Norlin never, ever sued Fernandes. Finally, in 2000, Gibson sued Fernandes. What happened? Unsurprisingly, the Tokyo High Court said, sorry Gibson, you waited too long. That's right, just like when Gibson sued Dean Gibson was barred from suing Fernandes because of the doctrine of laches. That's right. The court said you waited more than 2 decades. That's not allowed. You slept on your rights is the actual phrase that we often use in the law, sleeping on one's rights. The other thing that the High Court found was the exact finding that the court found in the PRS lawsuit, specifically that no one was ever going to confuse a Burny with a Gibson. What did they say? Well, just like the Smoky Bar argument, they said there is no chance of someone walking into a guitar store, asking for a Gibson, and walking out with a Burny. Why? Because, believe it or not, guitarists can read. We can read Gibson and we can read Burny, and there's no way that you can confuse the two. Just because they have a similar shape doesn't mean that there is an actual infringement. So, could you get sued by Gibson? Absolutely not. Could Burny or Fernandes get sued by Gibson? Well, they did get sued, and they lost resoundingly. Moreover, even though they sued in Japan, which you would think would give Fernandes and Burny the home field advantage, even if they tried to sue it here in America under PRS, again, they would lose because guitarists, shock of shocks, can read. So, is your guitar a counterfeit? No. If you want to take it that final step, is your guitar illegal? The only other way would be whether or not it's a violation of everyone's favorite intellectual property crime, the Lanham Act. However, it isn't a violation of the Lanham Act because it has that Burny name on it. That means it's not trying to hide its origin. Would there be a violation? Is it a counterfeit guitar? No, it's not a counterfeit guitar. And that's the point that the court in Gibson v. Dean said. These really aren't counterfeits. A counterfeit would be if you were buying a counterfeit Gibson that says Gibson on the headstock and is trying to pass itself off as a Gibson. You can sleep easy knowing that Gibson isn't going to be sending the police to your door to take your Burny guitar. Your guitar is not illegal. You have any other questions, feel free to ask me. In the meantime, once again, thanks.
All right, so Matt, thank you a ton for being part of this video. Thank you for explaining that to me. Now I have a much better understanding of how this works. And for everybody watching, definitely go over to the Blues Lawyer Confessional channel. I'll have a link for that down in the video description below. I couldn't have made this video without them, and I would probably still be spreading incorrect information if it wasn't for them. So my biggest mistake in all of this was I had no idea that Gibson had sued Fernandes, but then lost the lawsuit. I assumed that when they won that lawsuit against Ibanez all those years ago, that they would just continue to win similar cases against other companies in the future. Anyway, I was wrong. I did not do my research, and I apologize. So again, guys, big thanks to the Blues Lawyer Confessional channel. I'm going to have a link to them down in the video description below. And guys, how many of you out there saw that original Banned in the USA video? Like I said, I was wrong in that original video. I guess after all, Burny guitars can be freely sold in the USA, even though they're really not. I guess they could be because, you know, like Matt was saying in the video, Gibson, they sued Fernandes, the company that owns Burny. They lost the lawsuit because the court said, you know, you guys just waited way too long to enforce this intellectual property. All right, guys, thanks a ton for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you very soon.